The foundation charter lay on the mahogany table in the lawyer's office, its official seal gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Emma Manning, now 9 years old, read every word with the careful attention that had once saved both their lives. The Emma Manning Foundation for Child Advocacy, she read aloud, her voice filled with wonder. Dedicated to ensuring that every child's voice is heard and believed. Richard watched his daughter with deep satisfaction. 2 years had passed since that terrifying night when Emma had whispered her warning about the switched pills. Now that same courage and wisdom were being channeled into something that would help countless other children. "Are you ready to sign?" the lawyer asked with a smile. Emma picked up the pen with ceremony, her signature now confident and clear. "I, Emma Louise Manning, promise to use this foundation to help kids who are scared and need someone to believe them." The foundation had been Emma's idea, born from countless conversations about how they could use their experience to help others. Richard had provided the financial resources and business expertise, but the vision was entirely Emma's. "Our first project will be training programs for teachers and social workers," Emma explained to the lawyer, consulting notes she had written in a notebook that looked remarkably similar to the purple one that had started it all, teaching them how to recognize when kids are trying to tell them something important. Richard marveled at how Emma had transformed her trauma into purpose. She had started small talking to Mrs. Rodriguez about creating safe spaces for children to share concerns. Then she had expanded her vision to include art therapy programs, peer mediation training, and educational materials for parents and caregivers. "We're also going to create a scholarship fund," Emma continued, "for kids who want to study law or psychology or social work. Kids who want to help other kids." The lawyer nodded approvingly. "This is remarkable work for someone so young." "Emma has always been remarkable," Richard said, his voice thick with pride. "She's been an advocate since she was 7 years old." As they left the lawyer's office, Emma slipped her hand into Richard's. "Daddy, do you think my first parents would be proud of what we're doing?" Richard squeezed her hand gently. "Emma, I think they're incredibly proud of the woman you're becoming. You've taken something terrible and turned it into something beautiful." Emma smiled, the bright, confident smile that had replaced the fearful expression Richard remembered from their early days together. "I want kids to know that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared." They walked home through the tree-lined streets of their neighborhood, past the elementary school where Emma had found her voice, past the park where they had spent countless afternoons talking and dreaming. "You know what I realized?" Emma said as they reached their front door. "That night when I told you about the pills, I thought I was just trying to save you, but I was saving both of us." Richard stopped walking and knelt down to meet Emma's eyes. "You saved more than just us, sweetheart. You saved all the children we're going to help through the foundation. You saved all the families who will stay together because someone believed a child's story." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Emma, and I'm so proud of who you are and who you're becoming." As they entered their home, their sanctuary, their place of healing, Richard reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A whispered warning had become a foundation for hope. A frightened child had become a powerful advocate, and a man who had lost everything had found his true purpose. The future stretched before them, full of possibility and purpose, built on the unshakable foundation of love and truth that had saved them both. Richard Manning had everything money could buy, but tonight, as he reached for his heart medication with trembling fingers, he felt poorer than he'd ever been. The 7-year-old girl sitting cross-legged on his Persian rug watched him with those knowing eyes that seemed far too old for her small face. "She switched your pills," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible over the grandfather clock's steady ticking. "I saw her do it yesterday when you were sleeping." Richard's hand froze halfway to his mouth, the small white tablet catching the lamplight like a pearl. His wife's voice drifted from the kitchen downstairs, humming the same lullaby she'd sung to their daughter years ago, before the accident, before the lawyers, before everything changed. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" he asked, though something deep in his chest already knew the answer would shatter the last piece of trust he had left in this world. Emma's whisper carried the weight of a secret too heavy for such small shoulders. "The pretty lady put different ones in there, the ones that make people go to sleep forever," Richard set the pill back in the bottle with deliberate care, his businessman's mind already shifting into analytical mode despite the tremor in his hands. Emma watched him with those unervingly perceptive eyes. Her small frame curled in the oversized armchair, like a bird ready to take flight. "Emma, I need you to show me exactly what you saw," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. "Can you do that for me?" She nodded solemnly and disappeared upstairs, returning moments later with a small notebook bound in faded purple fabric. A cover was worn smooth by small hands, and Richard recognized it as one of the journals he'd bought her when she first came to live with them 6 months ago. "I write down the scary things," Emma explained, settling beside him on the sofa, "so I don't forget, and so maybe someone will believe me." Richard's heart clenched as she opened the notebook, revealing page after page of careful, childish handwriting. The entries were dated, some accompanied by simple drawings that made his blood run cold. There were sketches of Claire in the kitchen, pouring something from a small vial into his pill bottle. Another showed Claire on the phone, her face angry, speaking to someone Emma had labeled the man with the mean smile. "This one is from last week." Emma pointed to an entry dated just 5 days ago. "She was in your office, looking through your papers. She found the one about the money." Richard knew immediately what she meant. His will. Claire had been searching for his will. "Emma, have you noticed anything else? Anything that seemed wrong?" She flipped through several pages, her finger tracing the words as she read. "She's been putting things in your food too, not just the pills. Little white powder in your coffee sometimes. And she talks to herself when she thinks no one is listening." Richard's mind raced. The dizzy spells, the increasing fatigue, the way his hands had been shaking more frequently, symptoms he'd attributed to stress and age. But if Claire had been slowly poisoning him over weeks, even months. What does she say when she talks to herself? She says she's tired of waiting, that old people take too long to die. Emma's voice was matter of fact, but Richard saw the way her small hands trembled as she turned another page. "She says once you're gone, she'll send me back to the place with the sad children, the foster home." Claire had never wanted Emma here, had only agreed to the temporary placement because Richard had insisted. Now he understood why. A child's observations could be dismissed, but Emma had been watching, recording, protecting him in the only way she knew how. "We need to be very careful," Richard said, pulling Emma closer. "If what you're telling me is true, we're both in danger." Emma nodded with the gravity of someone far older than her years. "I know. That's why I finally told you. I was scared she might hurt you tonight." Richard looked at the pill bottle on the coffee table, then at the brave little girl who had quite possibly saved his life. For the first time in months, he felt something other than despair. He felt purpose. "We're going to stop her, Emma, together." Richard stared at the wedding photograph on his desk, its silver frame now seeming to mock him with its gleaming perfection. Claire's smile in the photo was radiant, her hand resting on his arm with what he had believed was genuine affection. Now, studying her expression with new eyes, he saw something else entirely, calculation, masked by beauty. "She never looked at you the way she looks at that picture," Emma observed quietly from the doorway of his study. She had been following him around the house, like a protective shadow since their conversation. Her notebook clutched against her chest. "What do you mean?" Emma approached the desk and pointed at the photograph. "She looks at this picture the way she looks at your checkbook, like it's something she owns." The innocent observation hit Richard like a physical blow. How had a 7-year-old child seen what he had missed for 3 years of marriage? He thought back to their courtship, Claire's sudden appearance in his life just 2 months after his first wife's death. How perfectly she had filled the void. How quickly she had agreed to marry him. How seamlessly she had moved into his world of wealth and privilege. "Emma, in your notebook, when did you first start noticing these things about Claire?" She flipped through the pages, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The first scary thing was ... here." She pointed to an entry from 4 months ago. "She was on the phone with someone, and she said, 'The old fool is completely devoted to me now. It won't be much longer.'" Richard's hands clenched into fists. 4 months ago was when he had updated his will, making Claire his primary beneficiary. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. "There's more," Emma continued, turning to another page. "She meets with the man with the mean smile every Tuesday at the coffee shop on Maple Street. I saw them once when Mrs. Henderson took me for ice cream. Richard's blood ran cold. Maple Street was across town, nowhere near Claire's usual shopping areas. If she was meeting someone there regularly, it was intentional, secretive. Can you describe this man? He's younger than you. Dark hair. He wears expensive clothes, but they don't fit right, like he's pretending to be someone important. Claire touches his hand a lot when they talk. A lover. Of course. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Claire hadn't just married him for his money. She had been planning his death from the beginning, with help from someone who clearly shared her motive. Richard walked to the window, looking out at the garden where Claire was tending to her roses. She moved with graceful precision, her every gesture calculated for maximum effect. Had she ever felt anything real for him, or had their entire marriage been an elaborate performance? "She's coming back inside," Emma whispered, moving away from the window. Richard quickly turned the wedding photograph face down on his desk. He couldn't bear to look at it anymore, couldn't stand the reminder of how thoroughly he had been deceived. The woman he had loved, had trusted with his life, had been slowly killing him while planning a future with another man. "Emma, we need to be very careful about what we say and do from now on. If Claire suspects, we know ... She hurt us both," Emma finished, her voice small but determined. "I know, but we can't let her win." Richard looked at this remarkable child, who had somehow found the courage to save them both. "No, we can't, and we won't." Richard's study felt like a war room as he and Emma huddled over his desk. The will that had once represented security now transformed into evidence of Claire's deadly intentions. The legal document lay open between them, Claire's name prominently, featured as the primary beneficiary of his considerable estate. "She doesn't know that I know," Richard said quietly, his finger tracing the signature line. "That's our advantage." Emma nodded, her small hands wrapped around a cup of hot chocolate Richard had made for her. "She thinks I'm just a little kid who doesn't understand grown-up things. But you understand more than most adults," Richard replied, meaning every word. "Emma, I need you to help me with something very important. Can you keep watching Claire without her knowing?" "I've been doing that for months," Emma said with a slight smile. "She never pays attention to me unless you're around." Richard felt a pang of guilt. In his grief and distraction, he had left Emma to navigate this dangerous situation alone. Never again. "I'm going to pretend to keep taking the pills," he explained, "but I'll palm them instead, make it look like I'm swallowing them. Meanwhile, I need you to keep recording everything you see in your notebook. Every phone call, every meeting, every strange thing she does." Emma's eyes brightened with understanding. "You're setting a trap." "Exactly. But first, we need to protect ourselves." Richard pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer today. I'm going to change my will without Claire knowing." "What will you change it to?" Richard considered this carefully. "Most of it will go to charity. Children's charities. Specifically, kids who need advocates, who need someone to believe them." He looked at Emma meaningfully. "And I'm setting up a trust fund for you, so you'll always be taken care of." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You'd do that for me?" "Emma, you saved my life. More than that, you've shown me what real courage looks like." Richard reached across the desk to take her small hand. "I should have been protecting you, not the other way around." They spent the next hour planning their strategy. Emma would continue her observations, being extra careful to record times and details. Richard would maintain his normal routine while secretly gathering evidence. Most importantly, they would act normally around Claire, giving her no reason to suspect their newfound alliance. "There's something else," Emma said as they prepared to leave the study. "I think she's planning something soon. She's been more nervous lately, checking the calendar a lot." Richard's blood chilled. "What date has she been looking at?" "Next Friday." She circled it in red ink. Next Friday was exactly 1 week away. Richard's mind raced through the possibilities. What significance could that date hold? Then he remembered. Next Friday was when his business partner would be out of town, when fewer people would be around to question a sudden medical emergency. "Emma, you might have just given us the timeline we need." Richard stood, feeling more energized than he had in months. 1 week to gather evidence and stop her. Emma slipped her notebook into her jacket pocket. "She won't expect us to fight back." "No, she won't." Richard looked at his brave young ally. "That's exactly why we're going to win. Together, They left the study to begin their careful dance of deception, each playing their role while working toward the same goal: justice. Emma's discovery came on Wednesday morning, hidden beneath Claire's jewelry box, like a secret too dangerous to keep in plain sight. The small black phone buzzed insistently while Claire was in the shower, and Emma, who had been dusting the bedroom, as part of her new role as their invisible observer, quickly photographed the screen with Richard's old camera. "Look at this," she whispered urgently, when she found Richard in his study an hour later. The photograph showed a text message from someone named D. "Friday still on? Getting impatient. This has dragged on too long." Richard's hands trembled as he examined the image. D had to be the man with the mean smile Emma had described. The timeline was accelerating, and they were running out of time. "There's more," Emma said, pulling out her notebook. She got 3 more messages after that one. "I wrote them down word for word." Richard read Emma's careful transcription. "Make sure it looks natural. Heart attack from stress. Then I'll handle the girl. Foster system won't ask questions about another placement. Finally, meet me at the usual spot tonight. We need to finalize everything." The casual reference to Emma's fate made Richard's vision blur with rage. Claire wasn't just planning to kill him, she was planning to abandon Emma back to the foster system, treating her like an inconvenience to be discarded. "Emma, I need you to stay very close to me from now on," Richard said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Don't go anywhere in the house alone. And if Claire tries to give you anything to eat or drink, you come find me immediately." Emma nodded solemnly. "She's been acting different since yesterday, more nervous. She keeps looking at me like she's trying to figure something out." Richard's stomach dropped. "What kind of looks?" "Like when Mrs. Henderson's cat stares at birds through the window, like she's hunting." The innocent comparison chilled Richard to the bone. If Claire suspected that Emma knew something, or if she had simply decided the child was too much of a liability to keep around, "We need to move faster," Richard decided. "I'm calling Detective Morrison this afternoon. Will he believe us?" "He'll have to. Between your notebook and what we've discovered about Claire's secret phone, we have enough evidence to at least get an investigation started." Emma pulled out her notebook and showed Richard the latest entries. "I've been tracking her patterns. She always meets with D on Tuesdays and Fridays. Today is Wednesday, so her next meeting is tomorrow night." Richard studied the detailed observations. Emma had noted everything: the times Claire left the house, how long she was gone, what she wore, what mood she was in when she returned. The child had been conducting surveillance with the dedication of a professional investigator. "Emma, you realize you've been protecting me for months, don't you?" She shrugged, but Richard saw the pride in her eyes. "Nobody else was paying attention, and you're the only grown-up who's ever been nice to me." The simple statement broke Richard's heart. This brave little girl had been fighting for both their lives, while he had been obliviously walking toward his own death. "After tomorrow night, this will all be over," Richard promised. "One way or another." Emma looked up at him with those wise, old eyes. "I hope so. I'm getting tired of being scared all the time." Richard pulled her close, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "You won't have to be scared much longer." The small voice recorder Emma had found in Richard's desk drawer sat between them like a silent witness as Claire entered the living room Thursday evening. She wore her favorite blue dress, the one Richard had once told her made her eyes sparkle, and her smile was perfectly calibrated to convey loving concern. "You look tired, darling," she said, settling beside him on the sofa. "Are you taking your medication regularly?" Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring in a picture book with determined concentration. To anyone watching, she appeared absorbed in her art, but Richard knew she was listening to every word. "Actually, Claire, I wanted to talk to you about my medication," Richard said carefully. "I've been having some concerns." Claire's smile faltered for just a moment, so briefly that someone who wasn't looking for it might have missed it entirely. "What kind of concerns?" "Well, I've been feeling worse lately, not better. And I noticed the pills look different from what I usually take." "Different how?" Claire's voice remained steady, but Richard saw her hands clench slightly in her lap, smaller, white instead of the usual blue. Richard reached for the pill bottle on the coffee table, his movements deliberately slow. "I called Dr. Peterson's office today." The color drained from Claire's face. "Oh? What did they say?" "They told me something very interesting." Richard's Voice was calm, conversational. They said they never prescribed these pills. In fact, they said these aren't heart medication at all. Emma's coloring slowed, her small body tensing as she prepared for whatever was about to happen. Claire stood abruptly, her composure cracking. Richard, I don't understand what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Claire. I'm stating facts. Richard also stood, and Emma quietly activated the voice recorder. I know you've been poisoning me. I know about your meetings with your lover. I know about Friday's plan. Claire's mask finally slipped completely. You don't know anything. I know you married me for my money. I know you've been slowly killing me for months. And I know you planned to dispose of Emma like garbage once I was dead. That little brat, Claire snarled, her gaze snapping to Emma. She's been spying on me, hasn't she? Filling your head with lies. Emma saved my life, Richard said firmly. She's braver than you'll ever be. Claire laughed, a harsh sound that transformed her beautiful face into something ugly. Brave? She's a throwaway kid nobody wanted. Just like you're a pathetic old man who was so desperate for love, you couldn't see what was right in front of you. Tell me about the pills, Claire. Fine. Yes, I switched them. You were taking too long to die naturally, and I got tired of waiting. Claire's voice was cold now, all pretense abandoned. Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend to love someone as boring as you? To smile and play the devoted wife? Wow. You droned on about your business deals and your stupid charity work? Emma's hand trembled as she held the recorder, but she kept it steady. And Emma? Richard asked quietly. Foster care, where she belongs. One phone call about behavioral problems, and she'd be gone. Claire shrugged. I never wanted her here anyway. The recorder captured every word, every cruel admission. Richard felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. Finally, he knew exactly who Claire was. I think we're done here, he said simply. Claire's realization of what had just happened crashed over her like a wave. Her eyes darted between Richard's calm face and Emma's small figure on the floor, finally registering the voice recorder in the child's steady hands. You little witch, Claire hissed, lunging toward Emma. Give me that thing. Richard stepped between them, his voice sharp with authority. Don't you dare touch her. Claire's composure completely shattered. She ran to the kitchen, Richard and Emma following cautiously. They watched as she frantically pulled drawers open, searching for something. The burner phone, Richard realized. Looking for this? Emma held up the small black device she had quietly retrieved from upstairs during Claire's confession. Claire's face contorted with rage. You have no idea what you've done. No idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Richard said calmly. A woman who tried to murder her husband and planned to abandon a child. Claire grabbed her purse from the counter, her movements jerky and desperate. This isn't over. You think you're so clever, but you have no proof it will hold up in court. Actually, we do. Richard pulled out his own phone. I've been recording this entire conversation as well, and Emma's notebook has been documenting your activities for months. Claire's eyes went wide with panic. She bolted for the garage, Richard and Emma close behind. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her car keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the door. Claire, stop, Richard called out. Running will only make this worse. Worse? Claire spun around, her perfectly styled hair disheveled. My life is ruined. Do you understand that? Everything I worked for, everything I planned gone because of a nosy little girl. Emma stepped forward, her voice small but unwavering. You were going to kill him, and then you were going to throw me away like trash. You are trash, Claire screamed. You're nothing but a burden nobody wanted. Richard's protective instincts flared. Enough. Emma is worth 100 of you. Claire threw her purse into the car and climbed behind the wheel. I'm leaving. And when I'm gone, you'll never be able to prove anything. Where are you going to go, Claire? Richard asked reasonably. Your face will be on every news station in the country. Your lover will abandon you the moment this becomes public. You have nowhere to run. Claire started the engine, her hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. I'll figure something out. I always do. Emma walked to the garage door controls and pressed the button. The door began to lower with mechanical precision. Emma, what are you doing? Richard asked. The police are already here, she said simply. I called them 20 minutes ago. Claire's scream of rage was cut short by the sound of sirens approaching. Through the garage windows, they could see the flashing lights of police cars pulling into the driveway. You called them? Richard stared at Emma in amazement. I used the phone in the kitchen while you were talking to her. I told them we had evidence of attempted murder and needed help right away. Claire frantically tried to back out of the garage, but the lowered door blocked her escape. She was trapped, her careful plans crumbling around her. Richard knelt beside Emma, pulling her close. You magnificent, brilliant girl. You saved us both. The police surrounded the garage, their voices commanding Claire to turn off the engine and exit the vehicle. Her reign of terror was finally over. The district attorney's office felt enormous to Emma as she sat in the leather chair across from prosecutor Sarah Chun, her legs dangling several inches from the floor. Her notebook lay open on the mahogany table between them, its purple cover worn smooth by nervous fingers. Emma, I know this is scary, Miss Chun said gently, but you're the most important witness in this case. Without your observations and your courage, Mr. Manning would be dead. Richard squeezed Emma's hand reassuringly. You don't have to be afraid. I'll be right there with you. Emma nodded, though Richard could see the tension in her small shoulders. Will the bad lady be there? Mrs. Manning will be in the courtroom. Yes, but she can't hurt you anymore. The judge will make sure of that. Over the past 2 weeks, Emma had spent hours with Miss Chun, going through every entry in her notebook, explaining her drawings, and practicing her testimony. The child's detailed observations had provided a timeline of Claire's poisoning attempts that corroborated the medical evidence. Let's review your testimony notes one more time, Ms. Chun suggested, pulling out a sheet of paper covered in Emma's careful handwriting. Emma had insisted on writing her own notes, refusing offers of help from the adults. I want to use my own words, she had said firmly, so the judge knows I'm telling the truth. Richard watched with pride as Emma read through her notes, her finger following each line. She had organized her testimony chronologically, starting with her first suspicious observations and ending with the night of Claire's confession. The level of detail was remarkable: times, dates, direct quotes, even descriptions of Claire's facial expressions and body language. What if her lawyer tries to make me look stupid? Emma asked, voicing the fear that had been troubling her for days. Emma, listen to me, Miss Chun said seriously. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met. You saved someone's life by being observant and brave. No lawyer can take that away from you. Richard felt a surge of protective anger. Emma, if anyone tries to intimidate you or make you feel bad, you just look at me. Remember, we're telling the truth. The truth is always stronger than lies. They spent another hour rehearsing, with Ms. Chun playing the role of the defense attorney and asking challenging questions. Emma's answers were clear and consistent, never wavering from the facts she had recorded. I think we're ready, Ms. Chun announced finally. Emma, you're going to do wonderfully. The jury will see exactly what I see, a brave, honest girl who did the right thing. As they prepared to leave, Emma tugged on Richard's sleeve. Are you proud of me? Richard knelt to her level, his eyes bright with emotion. Emma, I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life. You saved my life, and you're going to help make sure Claire can never hurt anyone else. Emma smiled, the first genuine smile Richard had seen from her in weeks. Good, because I don't want other kids to be scared like I was. Walking out of the prosecutor's office, Richard realized that this remarkable child had not only saved his life, but had taught him what real courage looked like. Tomorrow, she would face her greatest test, but she was ready. They both were. The witness stand seemed to dwarf Emma as she climbed into the chair, her testimony notes clutched in her small hands. The courtroom was packed with reporters, legal observers, and curious onlookers, all drawn by the sensational story of the child who had saved her guardian from murder. Judge Harrison adjusted his glasses and smiled kindly at Emma. Please state your name for the record. Emma Louise Carter, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. I'm 7 years old, and I live with Mr. Manning. Richard watched from the gallery, his heart swelling with pride and worry in equal measure. Emma looked so small up there, yet she sat with the quiet dignity of someone far older. Ms. Chun approached the witness stand with gentle confidence. Emma, can you tell us how you came to live with Mr. and Mrs. Manning? My parents died in a car accident, Emma said matter-of-factly. Mr. Manning knew them from work, and he said I could stay with him until the social workers found me a new family. But then I started noticing scary things about the pretty lady. The pretty lady? Mrs. Manning, she didn't like me very much, but she pretended to when Mr. Manning was around. The jury leaned forward, captivated by Emma's honest, unvarnished testimony. She described her observations with the precision of a trained investigator, referring to her notebook when needed, but never losing track of the chronology. "Can you tell us about the night you warned Mr. Manning about the pills?" Emma's voice grew more serious. "I saw her switch them that afternoon. She took his real medicine and put different pills in the bottle. When I saw Mr. Manning reaching for them that night, I knew I had to tell him or he might die." The defense attorney, Mr. Garrett, tried to shake Emma's testimony during cross-examination, but she remained unflappable. "Isn't it true that you didn't like Mrs. Manning because she was strict with you?" "No, sir. I didn't like her because she was planning to kill Mr. Manning and send me back to foster care." "But you can't really know what someone is planning, can you?" Emma looked at him with those wise eyes. "I know what I saw and heard. I wrote it all down so I wouldn't forget." Mr. Garrett pressed harder, trying to portray Emma as a confused child who had misunderstood adult conversations. But Emma's responses were consistent, detailed, and unshakable. "Mr. Garrett," Judge Harrison interrupted after the attorney's third attempt to confuse Emma, "the witness has answered your question clearly. Please move on." When Richard took the stand, his testimony corroborated Emma's observations perfectly. He described his deteriorating health, his growing suspicions, and the night Emma had saved his life with her whispered warning. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous: guilty on all charges of attempted murder and conspiracy. As the judge read the verdict, Richard saw Claire's face crumple with defeat. Emma, sitting beside him in the gallery, reached for his hand and squeezed it tight. "Is it over?" she whispered. "It's over," Richard confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Emma. You saved us both." The gavel came down with finality, and Richard felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Justice had been served, and they were finally free to build their future together. The adoption papers felt substantial in Richard's hands as he signed his name with careful precision. Across the desk, Emma watched with barely contained excitement, her feet swinging from the chair in the family court office. "Well, Mr. Manning," Judge Rodriguez said with a warm smile, "it looks like you're about to become a father." "I've been a father for months," Richard replied, looking at Emma with deep affection. "This just makes it official." The social worker, Mrs. Patterson, had initially expressed concerns about a 60-year-old widower adopting a 7-year-old girl, but Emma's passionate testimony about wanting to stay with Richard had been impossible to ignore. The trauma counselors' reports showed remarkable progress in Emma's healing, all attributed to the stability and love Richard provided. "Emma, do you understand what this means?" Judge Rodriguez asked gently. Emma nodded solemnly. "It means Mr. Manning is my real daddy now, and nobody can ever take me away from him." "That's exactly right." The judge handed Emma a certificate with her new name, Emma Louise Manning. "How does that sound?" Emma traced her finger over the official seal, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "It sounds like home." Richard felt his own eyes water. In the months since Claire's trial, he had watched Emma slowly transform from a frightened, hyper-vigilant child into a confident, joyful little girl. She still had nightmares sometimes, and she still kept her notebook close, but she was learning too. Trust that the world could be safe. "What do you want to do first, as officially part of the Manning family?" Richard asked as they walked to the car. Emma considered this seriously. "Can we go to the cemetery? I want to tell my first parents that I'm okay now." Richard's heart squeezed. Even in her happiness, Emma remembered those who had come before. "Of course we can." At the cemetery, Emma knelt beside her. The new pill bottle sat on Richard's nightstand, its label clearly marked with his proper heart medication, the pills that would actually help him heal rather than slowly kill him. 3 months after Claire's conviction, his health had improved dramatically. The trembling in his hands had stopped. His energy had returned, and his doctor marveled at his recovery. "It's remarkable," Dr. Peterson had said during Richard's latest checkup. "Your heart function has improved significantly. Whatever you were taking before was clearly not helping." Richard had shared a knowing look with Emma, who had accompanied him to the appointment. They both understood the dark irony Claire's attempt to murder him had been so gradual that his recovery was equally slow but steady. "Daddy, you look like you used to in the old pictures," Emma observed as they walked through the hospital corridors. She had started calling him Daddy naturally after the adoption, and each time she said it, Richard felt a surge of pure joy. "I feel better than I have in years," Richard replied. And it was true. The physical healing was only part of his recovery. Having Emma in his life had given him purpose, direction, and a love deeper than anything he had experienced. Emma's own healing journey had been equally remarkable. Her nightmares had become less frequent, and she had started making friends at her new school. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had been amazed by Emma's maturity and insight. "She's like a little counselor," Mrs. Rodriguez had told Richard during their parent-teacher conference. "The other children naturally gravitate toward her when they're upset. She has this way of making them feel heard and understood." Richard wasn't surprised. Emma's early trauma had given her an unusual ability to recognize when others were struggling, and her natural empathy made her a source of comfort for her classmates. "I want to be a lawyer when I grow up," Emma had announced one evening over dinner, "like Miss Chun, so I can help kids tell their stories in court." "That's a wonderful goal," Richard had encouraged. "You'd be excellent at it." Emma had beamed with pride. "I've been practicing with my stuffed animals. Mr. Bear keeps changing his testimony, but I think he's just nervous." Their home had transformed as well. The formal, sterile atmosphere that had characterized Richard's life with Claire had given way to a warm, lived-in feeling. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator. Her books were scattered throughout the house, and her laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for too long. "Daddy, can we have a sleepover party for my birthday?" Emma asked one Saturday morning as they worked in the garden together. Richard had discovered that Emma loved helping him tend the flowers, and gardening had become one of their favorite shared activities. "Of course we can. How many friends do you want to invite?" "All of them," Emma said with enthusiasm. "And maybe we can make those cookies you taught me to bake." Richard smiled, watching his daughter carefully water the seedlings they had planted together. "We can make as many cookies as you want." Emma paused in her watering, looking up at him with sudden seriousness. "Daddy, are you happy?" "Emma, I have never been happier in my entire life." She nodded, satisfied, and returned to her task. "Good, because I love you more than anything in the whole world." "I love you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know." The art supplies Richard had bought for Emma covered the dining room table like a rainbow explosion watercolors. Colored pencils, markers, and sketch pads in every size. Emma sat cross-legged on her chair, her tongue poking out in concentration, as she worked on her latest creation. "What are you painting today?" Richard asked, settling beside her with his morning coffee. "It's the story of us," Emma said, not looking up from her work. "See? This is you when you were sad and sick." She pointed to a figure hunched over with gray clouds surrounding him. "And this is me when I was scared." A small figure hiding behind a tree, eyes wide with worry. Richard studied the painting with growing amazement. Emma had divided the large paper into sections like a comic strip, telling their story through her child's perspective. The early panels showed dark, muted colors: Richard's illness, Emma's fear, Claire's deception rendered as a shadowy figure with red eyes. "And this part?" Richard pointed to the middle section, where the colors began to change. "That's when I decided to be brave," Emma explained. "See the purple notebook? That's when I started writing down the scary things. And this yellow light, that's when I told you about the pills." The progression was remarkable. As the story moved forward, the colors became brighter, warmer. The final panels showed Richard and Emma together, surrounded by flowers and sunshine, their faces filled with joy. "Emma, this is incredible," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've captured our whole journey." Emma beamed with pride. "Dr. Martinez said art helps people understand their feelings. I think it's working." Dr. Martinez was the child psychologist who had been helping Emma process her trauma. The progress had been steady, but not without challenges. Emma still had difficult days when the memories felt too heavy, when the fear crept back in. "Tell me about this part," Richard said, pointing to a panel where Emma appeared to be talking to two figures in the clouds. "Those are my first parents," Emma said softly. "I painted them watching over us. They're happy we found each other." Richard felt his throat tighten. Emma's ability to honor her past while embracing her future continued to amaze him. "I think they would be very proud of you." "They are," Emma said with quiet certainty. Sometimes I dream about them, and they tell me they're proud of how brave I am. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Emma adding details to her painting while Richard sketched in his own notebook, a habit he had picked up from watching Emma. He found that drawing helped him process his own emotions, particularly the complex feelings about Claire's betrayal. "Daddy, can we make a book of our story?" Emma asked suddenly. "With my pictures and your words? That's a wonderful idea," Richard said. "We could call it The Girl Who Whispered." Emma's eyes lit up, and maybe other kids could read it and learn that it's okay to tell adults when something is wrong. "Emma, you continue to amaze me," Richard said, pulling her close. "That's exactly what we'll do." Emma snuggled against him, her paintbrush still in her hand. "I like making beautiful things now, instead of just writing about scary things." "You are the most beautiful thing in my life," Richard whispered, kissing the top of her head. Mrs. Patterson arrived for her monthly visit with a warm smile and a manila folder thick with official documents. As Emma's social worker, she had been monitoring the adoption placement, but her visits had evolved from formal inspections to friendly check-ins with a family she had grown to love. "Emma, you look wonderful," Mrs. Patterson said, settling into the living room chair that had become her spot during these visits. "How are you feeling about school?" Emma curled up on the sofa next to Richard, her latest art project spread across the coffee table. "I love it. Mrs. Rodriguez says I'm going to skip ahead in reading next semester." "That's wonderful news." Mrs. Patterson made a note in her file. "And how are you sleeping?" "Much better," Emma replied honestly. "I still have bad dreams sometimes, but Daddy taught me to write them down in my journal, and that helps them go away." Richard felt a surge of pride. Emma's progress had been remarkable, but it hadn't been without challenges. The nightmares had been particularly difficult in the early months, leaving Emma exhausted and frightened. Working with Dr. Martinez, they had developed coping strategies that were clearly working. "Mr. Manning, I have to say, the transformation in Emma has been extraordinary," Mrs. Patterson said, her professional demeanor softening. "In all my years of social work, I've rarely seen a child recover from trauma as successfully as Emma has." "Emma did the hard work," Richard replied, squeezing his daughter's hand. "I just provided the safe space for her to heal." Mrs. Patterson flipped through her folder, reviewing the various reports and assessments. Dr. Martinez's latest evaluation is glowing. Emma's teacher reports excellent academic progress and healthy social relationships. Her pediatrician says she's thriving physically. Emma looked up at Richard with a grin. "Does that mean I'm normal now?" "Sweetheart, you were never not normal," Richard said gently. "You were just hurt, and now you're healing." Mrs. Patterson nodded approvingly. "That's exactly right. Emma, you've shown incredible resilience and courage, not just in helping save Mr. Manning, but in your recovery process." "I had help," Emma said, leaning against Richard. "Daddy makes me feel safe." "That's exactly what we hoped would happen," Mrs. Patterson said, making final notes in her file. "Mr. Manning, I'm officially recommending that we close Emma's case. The placement is clearly successful, and she's thriving in your care." Richard felt a weight lift from his shoulders. While he had never doubted his commitment to Emma, the official approval meant they could move forward without the oversight of the state system. "What does that mean exactly?" Emma asked. "It means you're officially, completely, permanently part of the Manning family," Mrs. Patterson explained. "No more monthly visits, no more reports, just a normal family living their normal life." Emma's smile could have lit up the entire room. "Really? No more questions about whether I'm happy here?" "No more questions," Mrs. Patterson confirmed, "though I hope you'll still send me pictures of your artwork. I've been bragging about your talent to everyone in the office." Emma jumped up and hugged Mrs. Patterson tightly. "Thank you for helping me find my daddy. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like," Mrs. Patterson replied, her voice emotional. "You two are going to do amazing things together." As Mrs. Patterson packed up her files, Richard realized that this visit marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. They were no longer a placement. They were simply a family. Emma's report card lay open on the kitchen table, a collection of A's and glowing comments that made Richard's heart swell with pride. "Exceptional student," Mrs. Rodriguez had written. "Shows remarkable empathy and leadership skills. A joy to have in class." "Daddy, look at this one," Emma said, pointing to a comment about her creative writing. "She says my stories are emotionally mature and insightful." Richard smiled. remembering the first story Emma had shared with him, a tale about a little girl who saved a castle from a dragon by listening carefully and being brave. The metaphor hadn't been lost on him. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," Richard said, pulling Emma onto his lap. "But I'm proudest of how kind you are to your classmates." Emma's kindness had become legendary at school. When new student Marcus had been too shy to speak during his first week, Emma had quietly befriended him, helping him find his voice. When Sarah had struggled with reading, Emma had offered to be her reading partner. Her teacher had started calling her the class counselor. "Mrs. Rodriguez wants me to be in the gifted program next year," Emma said, her voice filled with excitement. "She says I think differently than other kids my age. How do you feel about that?" Richard asked, always careful to gauge Emma's emotional response to new situations. "I'm excited," Emma said honestly, "but also a little scared. What if the other kids think I'm weird?" Richard hugged her closer. "Emma, you're not weird. You're special. There's a difference. You see things other people miss, and you have the courage to speak up about them. That's a gift." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Like how I saw what Claire was doing when nobody else did." "Exactly like that. Your ability to observe and understand people is remarkable." That afternoon, Richard attended parent-teacher conferences, where Mrs. Rodriguez painted an even more detailed picture of Emma's progress. "She's academically advanced, of course, but what impresses me most is her emotional intelligence," the teacher explained. "She has this way of helping other children feel heard and understood." "She's always been perceptive," Richard said, thinking of how Emma had protected him before he even knew he needed protection. "There's more," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "Emma has started a feelings circle during recess. When children are upset or have conflicts, they come to her. She listens to both sides and helps them work things out." Richard felt a familiar surge of pride mixed with protectiveness. "Is that appropriate for a 7-year-old? Normally, I might be concerned," Mrs. Rodriguez admitted, "but Emma has a natural gift for this. She's not trying to fix everyone, she's just helping them feel heard. And it's clearly therapeutic for her as well." When Richard shared this conversation with Emma later, she listened with a serious expression that had become familiar. "I like helping people," Emma said simply. "When I was scared and nobody believed me, I felt so alone. I don't want other kids to feel that way." "You're going to help a lot of people in your life," Richard predicted. "But remember, you don't have to carry everyone's problems. You're still a little girl who deserves to play and have fun." Emma grinned. "I know, but helping people makes me happy. Is that weird?" "No, sweetheart. That's beautiful." The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Mrs. Patterson, with gentle hands and careful words. The envelope was aged, yellowed at the edges, and addressed in handwriting that made Emma's breath catch in her throat. "Your birth parents left this for you," Mrs. Patterson explained, as she and Richard sat with Emma in the living room. "They asked that it be given to you when you are settled in a permanent home and emotionally ready to receive it." Emma's hands trembled as she held the envelope. She had been Emma Manning for 6 months now, but seeing her original name, Emma Louise Carter, written in her mother's careful script, brought a flood of memories. "Do you want me to read it with you?" Richard asked softly. Emma nodded, unable to speak. Together, they opened the envelope and unfolded the letter, dated just 2 weeks before the car accident that had changed everything. "My dearest Emma," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then something has happened to your daddy and me, and you're living with people who love you very much. We hope they're taking good care of our brave, smart, wonderful little girl." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she continued reading, Richard's steady presence beside her, providing comfort. "We want you to know that every day with you has been the greatest gift of our lives. You have the biggest heart, the brightest mind, and the strongest spirit of anyone we've ever known. We've watched you stand up for other children, speak truth, even when it's hard, and show kindness to everyone you meet." Richard felt his own throat tighten as he read the words of parents who had clearly adored their daughter. "Emma, we hope that whoever is caring for you now understands what a special person you are. We hope they see your gift for helping others, your courage in the face of fear, and your ability to find light even in dark places." Emma looked up at Richard through her tears. "They're talking about you, Daddy. They somehow knew you would take care of me. I think they knew you would find your way to someone who could love you as much as they did. Richard replied, his voice thick with emotion. The letter continued, "We've set up a trust fund for your education because we know you're going to do important things in this world, but more importantly, we've written down all our favorite memories of you, all the funny things you said, all the ways you made us proud. These memories are in a box in our safe deposit box, along with photos and videos of our time together." Emma's tears came freely now. "I thought I was forgetting them." "You could never forget them," Richard assured her. "They're part of who you are." The letter concluded, "Emma, we love you more than all the stars in the sky. We know you're going to grow up to be an amazing woman who helps people and makes the world better. And we know that the family who loves you now will support you in becoming everything you're meant to be." It was signed simply, "All our love forever, Mom and Dad." Emma folded the letter carefully and looked at Richard. "I can love them and love you too, right?" "Of course you can, sweetheart. Love doesn't have limits." "Good," Emma said, wiping her eyes, "because I think they would really like you." The official adoption certificate hung in a place of honor on the living room wall, its elegant script declaring Emma Louise Manning as Richard's legal daughter. But today, surrounded by friends and neighbors in their backyard, the real celebration wasn't about legal documents. It was about family. Emma stood on a chair in the middle of the garden, her new yellow dress bright as sunshine, addressing the small crowd that had gathered to celebrate her adoption. Mrs. Rodriguez was there with her husband. Dr. Martinez had come with a congratulatory gift, and even Miss Chun from the prosecutor's office had joined them. "I want to thank everyone for coming to my adoption party," Emma said, her voice clear and confident. "A year ago, I was really scared and didn't think I would ever have a real family again." Richard felt his chest tighten with emotion as he watched his daughter speak with such poise and wisdom. "But then I met my daddy, and he taught me that sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, not just the ones you're born into." Emma looked directly at Richard, her eyes bright with love. "He believed me when nobody else would, and he kept me safe when I was in danger." The crowd applauded softly, many wiping away tears. Emma's story had become well known in their community, and seeing her thriving was a source of joy for everyone who knew her. "My first parents loved me very much," Emma continued, "and they would be happy to know that I found someone who loves me just as much. Daddy, will you come up here?" Richard approached, his heart full, and Emma reached for his hand. "I have something for you," Emma said, pulling a small wrapped package from her pocket. "I made it myself." Richard unwrapped the gift carefully, revealing a small wooden keychain Emma had crafted in art class. It was painted with a simple scene, a man and a little girl holding hands under a rainbow. "It says World's Best Daddy on the back," Emma explained, "because that's what you are." Richard knelt down to Emma's level, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Emma, you have given me the greatest gift anyone could ask for. You've taught me what it means to be a real father." Emma threw her arms around his neck, and the crowd erupted in applause. Mrs. Rodriguez called out, "Speech," and soon others were chanting the same. Richard stood, keeping Emma close. "I won't give a long speech," he said, his voice carrying across the garden. "I'll just say that Emma has saved my life in every way a person can be saved. She's taught me about courage, about love, and about the importance of listening to those who need to be heard." He looked down at Emma, who was beaming up at him. "Emma, you're not just my daughter, you're my hero. I can't wait to see all the amazing things you're going to do in this world." "We're going to do them together," Emma corrected, causing another wave of applause. Later, as the sun set and the guests departed, Richard and Emma sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the twilight. "Was today perfect?" Emma asked, her head resting against Richard's shoulder. "Today was perfect," Richard confirmed. "And tomorrow will be too, because we'll face it together." Emma smiled sleepily. "I love being Emma Manning. I love that you're Emma Manning too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know." The college fund bank book sat open on Richard's desk, its pages showing steady deposits and growing interest. Emma, now 8 years old and wise beyond her years, studied the numbers with the same careful attention she had once given to her purple notebook. "This is for my education?" she asked, running her finger along the columns of figures. "This is for your future," Richard corrected gently. "Whatever you want to study, wherever you want to go, this will help make it possible." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about that. I want to study law, like Miss Chun, but I also want to learn about psychology, like Dr. Martinez, and maybe art therapy, because drawing helped me understand my feelings. Richard smiled, not surprised by Emma's comprehensive thinking. Even at 8, she saw connections others missed, understood that helping people required multiple skills and perspectives. That sounds like a perfect combination, Richard said. You could help children who've been through trauma, use art to help them heal, and advocate for them in court when necessary. Exactly. Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. I want to be the person I needed when I was scared. Someone who listens and believes kids when they tell the truth. Over the past year, Emma's vision for her future had become increasingly clear. She volunteered at the local children's library, helping younger kids with reading. She had started a peer mediation program at school, teaching other children conflict resolution skills. Her teachers consistently marveled at her maturity and insight. I've been thinking about something else too, Emma said, settling into the chair across from Richard's desk. I want to write a book about what happened to us, not for little kids, but for teenagers who might be in situations like I was. Richard leaned forward, intrigued. What would you want to tell them? That it's okay to be scared, but it's not okay to stay quiet when someone is being hurt. That adults should believe kids when they ask for help. That sometimes you have to be brave, even when you're terrified. Richard felt the familiar surge of pride and protectiveness. Emma, you're going to change so many lives. We're going to change lives, Emma corrected, echoing the phrase that had become their motto. This is our mission together. Richard's business had taken on new meaning since Emma entered his life. The success that had once felt hollow now served a purpose, funding Emma's education, supporting their future charitable work, and providing the resources they would need to help other children. I've been talking to my financial advisor about expanding your trust fund, Richard said. Not just for college, but for whatever projects you want to pursue. If you want to start a nonprofit, or open a center for child advocacy, or write books, I want to make sure you have the resources to do it. Emma's expression grew serious. That's a lot of responsibility. It is, Richard agreed, but I can't think of anyone I'd trust more with that responsibility. You've already shown that you use your voice to protect others. Emma stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where they spent so many peaceful hours together. Promise me something, Daddy? Anything. Promise that no matter how old I get or how busy I become, we'll always make time for each other. Like this, just talking. Richard joined her at the window, putting his arm around her shoulders. Emma, you're the most important thing in my life. That will never change. Good, Emma said, leaning against him, because I'm going to need your wisdom for all the work we're going to do.